much time as I can, about an hour and 3/4, might go to 2 hours, who knows. So this will be showing you a lot of different systems and techniques that you also can try. So I'm going to be a body to be a baseline for at some point, and I think Adam, wherever he is going to do that as well. So if anybody else wants to come and join us when you're asked, please just let us know. Well, there you are. Okay, thank you very much. This is Jeff Crockford of the Biolocation team and Nigel Hughes. Thank you.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you on behalf of the team, AMMACH, for asking us along and inviting us to tell you a bit about what we are doing in the area of biolocation. And as I doubt few of you have heard of biolocation, I better just give you a very quick snippet of it.
Sorry.
Good. You can now all hear me, can you?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Is that on? Yes?
Yeah. Basically, biolocation is the scientific application of the dowsing phenomena. And the dowsing phenomena is basically this business of holding rocks or twigs or something like that. And when you go through a magnetic field gradient, it sets off a reflex in the muscles, and the rods move, and you think, ah, yes, I found something. Now, that's all I'm going to say, because Nigel is going to deal with the science of it and show you that we're now dealing not with a sort of a paranormal phenomena, but with a real physiological sensory phenomena which you can use in a scientific way. So the science of biolocation has probably only been going for about 20 years, and it's based basically on two of the books that we've written, which you have seen during the day, which sets out the physics and the sensory side of it, and gives you basically the lowdown on the science. Now, initially, we were quite happy studying the archaeology of the pre-Roman period. And we got a lot of fun out of that. We were enjoying ourselves. And then Peter Vincent came along and said, oh, I've got a crash site of a UFO. And we said, okay, Peter, we'll go along and we'll have a look at it and see what it's like. And so he arranged for us to go along. We had a look at this site, and much to our amazement, we found a genuine crash site of a UFO. The crater, which was filled in, of course, was there, but we were able to find all the bits and pieces where the reactor from the craft had dug into the ground, bits of the fabric which had been sprayed over the fields, and we also found where the occupants had tried to get out of the aircraft using ejector seats. So this is the first time that we've come across this, and we found the body, or the chemical remains of the body, on the ground, and we were trying to work out exactly if it was a body, in point of fact, but it came up on phosphate, which indicated that it's a body, but we couldn't get any response on blood. And then we had the bright idea that perhaps it didn't have blood like us, and the blood might be based on one of the other metals that respiratory pigments are based on. So we actually found that it was based on copper. And from then on, we have tried to sort of categorize what we call the GILs, the galactic intelligent life forms, according to the respiratory pigments that they have. Now, see, Peter hadn't really finished with us at this point, and so once we had sort of done a bit of archaeology, looking at crash sites, looking at landing sites and so on, he said, well, what about what's up there? He said, why don't you have a look up there? And so we said, well, okay, we'll have a look. And it wasn't the first time we realized that we could get magnetic holograms down, because Nigel had already picked that up using tiles from the roof of his house. And he found that these tiles produced a magnetic anomaly, and that anomaly created a hologram as a three-dimensional image, magnetic image, of something which was up there. So Peter created this magnetic anomaly, and he said, oh, it's going to be there on such and such a date. And then, of course, Nigel and I forgot all about that. And then, sort of a day later, I rang up Nigel and we forgot about this ship was supposed to be coming down. And so Nigel rushed down, and there was the ship, the magnetic hologram of the ship, and I rushed over from Bovington to St Albans. And this was the first occasion that we found ourselves walking around the three-dimensional magnetic image of a spaceship. And we could literally go along the corridors, we could go through doors, we found the airlocks in the craft, and we then started looking at the engines, the actual technology of the craft. So we were making progress now. We're not only looking down there at the chemical stains in the ground, but we were looking up there at the magnetic fields which were coming down from above. Now, my job at the moment is just to introduce you to the program for the remainder of the evening that we've got here. And I have put out on the table a few of these what we call handouts, and the first page is in fact the program that we're going to try and follow. And so I'm dealing with the introduction, and then Nigel is going to do the main presentation for the evening, which is looking at the techniques we use, how we use the basic science of it. And then there'll be a few short presentations where we're going to tell you a bit about our research programs. One of the areas that you might be interested in is the nature of the galactic intelligent life forms, both the sort of technologies that they have, and also a peek at their cultures. And to, in a sense, try and ram home our techniques and how we do these things, we're going to give you two case studies. And one is going to be the Rendlesham Forest UFO, and I'll show you how we actually deal with that. And then that will only take a few minutes. And then Nigel's got a bigger one with a bit of film, I think, where he's going to show the work that he and a colleague did on Comet Icing. And then we're going to finish up with just a quick review of the things that we might be able to do in terms of abductions. Now, when a little while back, I was selling some books to somebody, a guy who already had them, came along to the guy who was just purchasing them, and he says, oh, what I recommend is you read the last two chapters first, and then start at the beginning to find out how they got there. So we're going to do the same technique today. I'm going to show you a few slides, and then the rest is going to be telling you how we got there. Now, the first one, and I'm just going to try and find a pointer over here. The first one is dowsing. This is a stain. We're responding to a painting that was put there by the priests in this temple. So this is the part of the floor of a Druidic temple. And Druidic temples are divided into 4 quarters, and each quarter has a picture in it or an idol of some sort. And this is looking south, and it's the picture of what we call a pea gill. And this was the guy whose bodies we found in our first crash site. So let's paint it. So when they painted it, they put the red ochre there for that little bit, and they put some woad there, and some line there, and so on. And as I will tell you later on, we can identify those. This is the benefit of it, of the work we do. It's forensic science. So we're using forensic science to identify the chemicals that are now in the ground. They've been taken down by the rain for a long way. They may be a foot, 2 foot, 3 foot down in the ground. But they're there still, and we can pick up their magnetic signature. So here we've got the gill. This is his head, and the pea gills, we always find that they're wearing a helmet. We haven't worked out why, because they are aerobic. They breathe oxygen. And he's got 2 staffs, and the staffs are actually coloured. And above him is a black area with the stars. And this is over in Ireland, and the constellation is in fact the plough. Now, if we move on to the next slide, this is a close-up of the head, and this looks very much like sort of goggles, but we don't think it is. We think it is a feature of the person himself, and these are buttons down his tunic, and they do have insignia denoting rank, very often on their shoulders and on their arms as well. If we move on to the next one, this is Nigel's rendition of it, and these are the colours that we're actually picking up. And we think that the peculiar nature of the clothing, its design, is to enable them to fly in a zero gravity field. So they can move around in a zero gravity field by, in the sense, flap their arms and moving. Then we move on to the next one. And now we're moving on to an S-gill. These are the carnivores, by the way. The previous ones were not. They were more vegetarians. These are carnivores. And this is taken from the floor of a temple, an S-gill temple. And it's more difficult to see, but I'll put it right. These are the legs spread out there. He's got his arms on either side here, and then I think this is probably the head with a headdress around it. So what we've got here is something which is deliberately painted on the floor of a temple to presumably look like a saint or a god or something like that. And I'm not showing you the rest of the temple, but the round it are the pews, if you like. And also, we know that these guys were making sacrifices, so we're beginning to pick up a bit of their culture. Right, we move on to the next one. Now, when I was down in Tenerife this year, they've got some pyramids in Tenerife, and along one of the main pyramids there's a walkway, and fortunately if you put something on top of stains, it protects the stains. It's not like ordinary, it doesn't interfere as it would do with ordinary archaeology. For us, a lot of stuff on top, it preserves them. And so I was able to get a very good picture of what we believe is in fact the face, the diagrammatic face. Remember, this is painted by a priest or something like that, of what we call an A-gill. And we believe that these may be his ears here, on his headdress. He's got a star pattern above his head, and there are 4 of these panels, and they contain writing. So we've actually got or could get, it's a laborious process, we could get the writing of the A gills if we wanted it. Now, one of the things that we can do is call down the images of various things that are in space. And one of the things we call down, of course, are some of their ships. And it so happens that the magnetic lens, if you like, holds the image steady. So although it may be moving and the Earth is rotating, that image remains steady. And so that gives us an opportunity to look at things which are painted on the hull of the ship. And so this insignia, if you like, on the hull of the ship is telling you who the ship belongs to and who is inside. And it's a planet with a blue sea, with green lands or continents on it. You'll see there's a difference to the next one. And we believe that this is indicating that the P and S gills are allies, because this belongs to an S-gill ship. And the ship, from stem to stern, was about a mile long. We were able to estimate the size, provided you've got something to compare it with. So we have the next slide. And this is a P-gill ship, and you'll notice that their sea is red, and there must be a reason for that. And the fresh water on their continents is in fact blue. And again, they've got a pattern of stars, and interestingly, they do distinguish between the different colours of the stars. So you've got the white, the red, and the blue stars there. And again, this is on the hull of one of their big ships. Then the next one, and this is how we're getting it out. So this is plotting it all out, laborious process, and then that is converted into the diagrams that you've just seen. Now that is not responding to a stain coming up from the ground, it's responding, the dowsing is responding to a field that's coming down from above. And the next one, and that's the other one that we did. Move on to the next one, and that's give you an indication of size of one of the team members there. Now we look at the insignia on smaller craft, and this is actually one on a fighter. So we're able to get these off the wings of the fighters. And the next one, and this was probably the first one we ever did, and I think this one looks the best. And again, I think is telling us that you've got the P&S gills, your allies, and that would probably be on all their fighters. Now this is a wee bit different to the other ones. This is from a painting in the ground. So this is an archaeological one, and any of you with the necessary skills can go along there and actually get this one out without any difficulty. The next one, and this is to give you an idea of the sort of fighters that they have. They are built to operate within space and in a planetary atmosphere. And so you find that they've got ceramic nose cones, which is shown diagrammatically here as a triangle. But the ceramics are on the leading edges of the wings and the tails. And it is a fighter. These are neon cannons. And these are indicating the crew. These are the windows, what they accommodate the windows. The reactor is back there. And then they have normally maser, what we call maser engines, which I might deal with a bit later. But interestingly, because it's coming down into the atmosphere, it also has air-breathing engines. And so the green is indicating the petroleum fuel, paraffin or whatever it is, for the air-breathing engines. Is that the last one? Oh, this is just one more insignia on the NASCAR. The NASCARs are the anaerobic So that's the sort of thing that we're getting. And what I'm going to do now is hand you over to Nigel, who's going to tell you how we get it.
Okay, how's that? Can you hear me okay? Right, so, my job then is to tell you a little bit about how we get these amazing diagrams from our actual dowsing. Because we've got quite a claim. Unlike a lot of ufology, we have got a lot of technical information from what we are observing. And we have the basic principles of their technology. It's quite a claim. But we wouldn't make that claim unless we're confident that we can take people out and show them how to do this and find the same things. As scientists, Jeff and I are scientists. Trained scientists. One of the things you must be able to do in any scientific work, of course, is to repeat and transfer your work to other people. And the results must be reliable in that they find more or less the same you find. There won't be anomalies and things like that. So it's quite a claim, and as the presentation goes on, there'll be more claims. So what I thought I'd do with my little talk is, as well as Jeff said, explaining a little bit about our techniques and the science behind it. It's been going now for 20 years. It's gone through quite a study. But we feel this is sort of a key to ET. And it's quite relevant because the techniques we can use, which we've been sort of looking at with one or two people, may be able to tell if someone's been abducted, because if you're taken into space, you will pick up what we call space chemicals. One of those is carbon-14. Carbon-14 is made in space, it drops down onto the Earth, gets assimilated into the plants and the biology of the Earth, and that allows us then to radiocarbon date things. Of course, up in space, if you're in an atmosphere, it'll be carbon-14 rich. That's our hypothesis. So we feel that it's something that we can develop as an hypothesis. It's work in progress, it's early days, but very encouraging results. We'll talk more about that later. First of all, a big thank you to Joanne and Mash for inviting us to present today. This is the first public airing of our work. And for years we've been running courses. AMMACH have already done one of the courses, and it's sort of quite scientific, but as you can see from some of the shots there, we provide equipment, we provide the right sort of environment, so you learn the techniques, and very quickly you can get on to doing research, very, very quickly. So there's an open invitation really from any of us. We're totally accessible. We will take you out, we can come on us on any field trips that we do. We are dowsing quite a lot every day. So there's an open invite for reciprocal invite for everyone on that. I'd just like to make a statement to follow up what Jeff has shown you, because it's quite a claim. We've been studying this now, put a little reminder for myself, since July 2011, which Peter and Alan Haley there, who've been doing a lot of work sort of dowsing alien material. We were sceptical, it's not that we didn't believe them, but scientists are trained to be sceptical. It's part of critical thinking Joanne mentioned earlier. You have to be critical, and you've got to sort of not take it personally. You have to challenge everything you did. And we went down there and confirm what we found. But my image there is of lots of ships, and we came up with this name, Cosmic Ocean. I haven't stolen it off Carl Sagan, because I don't use that comment. But that's what it is from our perspective. It's teeming up there with life, absolutely life. It's prevalent right through the solar system and beyond, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And one of the features we regularly observe are huge fleets flying around the place, and they also come around Earth. What exactly is going on, we're still trying to sort out. Quite a claim. And rather than ET, we call them galactic intelligent life forms, and where we got that term from is in one of our books when we were postulating about what life form, if life could get going in space, what that life form would actually take, what path it would take and how it would develop. But of course there are a couple of big things you've got to overcome about being a spacefarer. And obviously as you speed of your travel, you've got to be able to travel quick. Because we know the speed of light, if that's the speed limit out there, you can't get anywhere very quickly at all. And the other thing is your transmission. Radio waves are not up to the job. You cannot communicate by radio waves effectively in space. When they landed on the moon, there was a transmission delay of 3 or 4 seconds, I believe, to get back to Earth. I think when they go to Mars, that's going to be about 20 minutes. You go out further and further, you can't work in real time. They can. And we'll put forward our hypothesis and our observations and some demonstrations of the principles of that. July 2011 was a significant month when we did that sort of experiment, and it really changed my view of the world, my view of the solar system. So I suppose we want to say something now like on the TV, if you don't want to know the result, leave now, because it is a little bit sort of earth-shattering for us, what we found. And we'll present the evidence to yourselves, as to why that is. I'll just mention the biolocation team. We were a team from my old days in management training. Together, everyone achieves more. All our team now, we've got quite a team, I won't mention all the names, some of them are here today. They're all accomplished dowsers, some are new to it. They're all experienced. Dowsing is very complex. There's different sorts of dowsing, but one of the things we try and do is hold it together on a scientific basis. And the principle is really quite simple, as Jeff said. It's what we're doing. We're responding to magnetic fields from chemicals, i.e. atoms and molecules. And our sense is quite a sophisticated magnetometer. And this enables it to be a very powerful analytical tool, which again, I'll try and demonstrate shortly. I thought when we first met with Joanne, and we've done the course, I suddenly realised we had a lot in common with AMMACH. Certainly when our interface with ET isn't abduction or anything like this, but we are sort of studying them every day, and it's quite a profound experience, particularly the scale of what we think is going on out there. And that can take a little bit of dealing with sometimes in terms of where we are with our technology on the Earth. It's dowsing is dowsing, it's invisible stuff at the moment. So again, it's beyond our normal senses. I don't know much about abduction, to be honest, and in fact I didn't really know much about UFOs because I was a dowser, happily dowsing pipes and stains in the ground until July 2011 when we were introduced to this sort of phenomenon. There's a lot of motivation needed to actually sort this out. Thankfully the team has it, so the Biolocation team has it. And there's got to be some sort of service to investigate and support the phenomena. So we're always on the phone to each other all the time. Again, it's a good scientific principle that we actually do. I'll just mention very quickly about my own background, because for 23 years I was a pilot. And retired from that, but I was trained as a scientist and did various excellent jobs in science. I also worked in education, lecturing and things like that. I flew for 23 years. I never saw a UFO. I never saw anything. I came out of flying, and I moved on into other areas, management training, and did all sorts of work. And then I met Jeff. I'd done a bit of dowsing, never really understood what was going on. I knew I could douse. And then I met Jeff, adopted the methodology, and that was just under 20 years ago. And ever since, we've been sort of at it every day, trying to sort out the theory, sort out the techniques. So there's quite a history around that. But you know, I think that the point that I want to make there is that I am a physical dowser. I'm not a spiritual dowser, or an intuitive dowser, or a dimensional dowser. I am just using my responses, as you see in a minute, as a reflex action to magnetic fields. I'll try and just demonstrate some of the evidence for that in a moment. Where we think we can look at abduction is because any abduction process will leave a chemical trace. And I'll show you how many traces appear. There will be no difference. Physical entities, they will leave chemical traces. The forensics will be able to douse. The other thing that will be left will be this business about magnetic holograms. We'll call them a magnetic entity, because this is another aspect of the energy we douse. It's paramagnetic and diamagnetic energy. It can actually leave a magnetic entity which contains a lot of detail about the object that's created it. And that's how we can do it. And I'll be showing you that shortly. Due to the time, I'm just going to move on from that. But just to flash the slide here, it is all about science. From my perspective, although we work, as I said, I'm not an intuitive spiritual dowser. Some of the things there, scientific inquiry we should know about, baseline controls, designing experiments, using models and theories, testing and validation, reliability, repeatability. We build a lot of that into our methodology, and of course critical thinking skills. You know, we must evaluate what we do and the quality, how correct, have we made a mistake. We've got to be ready to change our mind. And you know, the York University will do a course on critical thinking, and I think every biolocator should sort of do something on critical thinking. It's very important. So I'm going to press on. This is our theory about spinning electrons, which creates the energy. And without going into a chemistry lesson, there is a theory, and it meets the observations, and it ties in with the fact that chemicals, atoms and molecules, well, the atoms can have paired electrons going around the nucleus, or single electrons, and this is what gives us the energy that we actually douse. And it is a sense that, like our other senses, so if we touch something hot, the transmission will go up into the spinal cord, go straight back out, and you'll move your hand away. So it has all the components written about in our books, and so on. And this leads on to what can we look for in a potential abduction case. Well, I mentioned contamination in the body, carbon-4, particularly iridium. That's a space chemical we find to use a lot. Implants inside the body, environmental contamination. There's this phenomenon called quantum tunneling, which I'll talk about shortly. And these holograms or magnetic entities associated with the dynamics of the abduction. So we'll discuss that. Right, so let's do some demonstrations, and we'll show you a very simple demonstration here of what we do on our courses and get everybody involved. First thing, we've got to teach you to learn to respond. And we do that in a number of ways. This crystal is a really good teaching, training crystal, so that's why I've got it. We won't worry too much about the contents of crystals and what they are. But very quickly, if you walk into that crystal, your rods will cross. You walk back, they'll go home. I can walk into there, go back, take a little step, walk in, and it looks like I'm following a line, go that line of energy. And if I come around the back, I get a very interesting effect, because my rods go out. So one of the first things we teach is to get people responding and getting this response really sharp and precise. A couple of other things about the, and again, this is the scientific inquiry. You change things, you explore things systematically. So if I walk briskly through, and I won't go off the end of the stage, I will get a really sharp, swift response. I'm going to just move it that way so you can see me. So I can go through there, and my rods fit. So when you see the things we've marked out there, what we're actually doing, instead of an energy field that way, it's coming out of the ground. That way, it's a line. And so when I walk over that crystal, I get a really nice response. One other thing about crystal. So this is all going along absolutely, John. But if I come in at an angle, I don't see it. Coming this way, I don't actually see it. If I put it up like this, then, and I walk towards it, I get a response there. If I come here, I won't get a response. But if I just turn in, I get a response. And then if I turn in again, I can follow a circle of energy all the way around. If I want to know where that crystal is, because of the gradient of the energy coming off it, I turn around, and as soon as I'm on max gradient to the crystal, I get a response. So the sensors are in the skin. This is a paramagnetic field. The sensors are in the skin. Again, we've identified the areas of the skin that are sensitive to it by blocking out the card. And this energy is quite easily blocked. It's not like ferromagnetism. I put a piece of card in there and been blocking for about 10 minutes, and then put down. I was going to do that, but I'm time conscious now. We're talking too much being about. So we do a lot to show people about this scientific inquiry, looking for patterns, looking for shapes. But the uptake of this is that your responses follow a pattern that's like a magnetic field. And you can further develop that, look at the properties of the shapes and what happens. And it's very clear that the evidence then that this is a real physical energy entity around it. Right. So I just reinforce that to show you that. So we'll move this on. So that's what we're looking like. So we're ending up with this three-dimensional entity. This is on the crystal. There are other entities that have other shapes, which we'll hopefully go through. Just want to show you why do the rods move. No energy around the rods. The rods move, again, on the course we spend a little bit of time on this, because we find people's responses improve when they understand what's going on. The cargo tubes are the arms. When you rotate your arms, like this, you can't rotate your hands independently of your arms. They have to rotate, and the rotation comes from the joint. There are a couple of muscles there, coordination, supination, and you rotate the arms. And what's happening is that you can video this, you can film it, you can put large dowsing rods on your arms and you can see them moving. So all that happens is that when you walk into this energy, your magnetic sensors in your skin hit the energy, there's a reflex action, it's a muscle twitch, it's a very, you won't see your arms moving unless you use a visual sort of indicator, and as they rotate in, they'll cross. And then They'll go back out by rotating out, and then rotate the other way. There's a little bit more of these for many courses. So we've got models, scientific inquiry again. We've actually got models to support the dowsing, and it really does help. We get, I think when Jeffrey started, he started to learn the dowse because he was working on detrimental energies from electrical equipment, and dowsers only seem to be the only ones who would detect that. But on our courses, generally, by about lunchtime, most people are really responding, really well to these energies. And then I could just walk around this room on stage, and I just respond, and there's energy everywhere. Because everything is paramagnetic or diamagnetic or both. So it's a complex world, this energy world. It overlaps. Sometimes it interferes, interacts, behaves in a particular way. It can be messed up by space weather. So the whole thing, the evidence for it is very powerful, and the dowser is really working. People every day, in everyday life, don't realise it, but the dowser realises that he's working, he or she is working in a sea, an ocean of energy. And that's sort of where we are. Right, we're moving on swiftly, and this is a bottle of water. Now we can do the same as the crystal with the water. I can put that on there. Let's get it nice and stable. And water's a liquid crystal. Right. Together, it was sitting on there earlier. We'll just give it a minute to settle. Folks. That should be there. So I get the same as the crystal. I walk in there. That's the response. I walk around the back. That's the response. I put the bottle upright. Slightly not as far out, but I get the aura of the bottle. Now, the differences to the crystal, of course, is that water, being a solution, we're like a bottle of water. The tissue fluids in our bodies will contain dissolved substances, and plus other substances from the blood vessels and muscles and things like that. So if that water contains any chemicals, we'll be able to dowse it, because the chemicals in there will also create an aura. So we just demonstrate that. And got here the bottle. I'm going to stand it up like this. There's a chemical in it. I might use the bell waters tripods. But I want to show you a nice little phenomenon now, because I want to introduce now another aspect of dowsing and how we can analyse chemicals in this water. And it's what's called a witness, and using a witness. And we also have another system which people in INSIT have developed, is using what we call codes. And we'll just briefly have a look at that, because it's quite a complex thing, but just to show you how you can do this. So in that bottle there, I've got chemical, and if I just get a piece of metal, which is an iron nail, I'm looking at the bottle of water because you do have a focus, you do this sense to be focused, and I'm walking there, and I'm holding the iron, I'm not getting any response. If I get the witness for what's oxygen, which is glucose sugar. Glucose is our petrol in our body, that's what our body uses for energy. And I walk towards that. Then I pick up the glucose oil. So witnesses are complex, and we teach this on the course, but they do a very important thing. They, first of all, if you hold a witness, they blind you, focus you on that field, they blind you to everything else. And the other thing they do is really enhance your sensitivity. So scientific inquiry, critical thinking, this is quality control. Your sense is much more efficient when you're using a witness. Gordon, could you walk this way? So I'm going to douse. Gordon's like bottled water. He's there for the tissue fluid and chemicals. If you just stand alongside the tripod, and I'll just remove that. So I can walk in to Gordon and there's his glucose. You can do mine. A little bit low now because we've been working, we haven't done much to heat. There we go. So that's the responses. Right, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask Gordon to eat a glucose tablet. 4 grams of glucose. Goodness me. Jeff, do you remember what the blood sugar level is? 100 milligrams or something like that? Can't remember. Anyone know blood sugar level? I should have researched that. It's about 100 milligrams per milliliter or liter, I can't remember. This is 4 grams. So it's a nice sweet, it's an energy sweet, it's raspberry flavoured. That glucose will go into Gordon's stomach now and will go out into the blood really quickly. And again, I think 2.5 litres of blood goes around the body in just over a minute or something, I believe. Physiology there is a bit rusty. So that glucose was already in his blood. So the size of the aura is related to the mass of the glucose. So if I come into Gordon now, this glucose aura is everything. The sweet's nice. Thank you very much. So what will happen with that, because 4 grams of glucose going into the blood is quite a lot, it will weigh out, and then the body will say, ah, that's too much glucose in the blood, and it'll start taking it out of the blood, sending it to the liver, converting it into starch, fuel, sugar regulation, and then the sugar level, which I'm not going to do now because I'm going to move on, will start to drop. So it's a very powerful demonstration, this, and you know, it sort of can be transferred to other people. The other thing you can do, so thank you, Russell. Later. The other thing you can do is following the body, things like amino acids, your bone density, that will produce an aura. So this is all sort of easily checked and baseline to known sort of models and what have you. Now, so it's pretty obvious from that simple demonstration, if you get taken up into space and we can identify the chemicals that are in the environment, in the crew environments, which we have, they're often pressurized. Carbon-14 is around, there are other chemicals associated with the space environment, and then we get into the abductee, we pick them up in the aura. Right. Also, if something gets implanted into you, let's implant, nail in there, you'll be able to pick that up. I'm just going to give it a minute because it'll take a while for the field to get through the bottle. And I'm sure what I did with the so remember, just now I doused the bottle of water, I didn't pick up any iron. Walk in there, there's the iron coming in. So that's the principle of how we think we might be able to do with AMMACH. Because as I said, our claims, and we'll look at the hologram atoms in the moment, very clear that they are up there big time. And we need more people to study it, more people to look at it, and the invitation is open to AMMACH to come and learn how we do it, and we're glad we give you our time to show you what's going on. So let's set a bit of a breather there, and I'll have a time check in a moment. That's just, so biolocation, it's really 3D geometry, para and diamagnetic energy, and it's all coming from the atoms, and that means anything that you do, any process, this is why in archaeology it's very important, it's a very important analytical tool. So we can dowse battles, we can dowse where the Romans fought, we can dowse done quite a few battle sites. Battle of Hastings we've been working on recently. It's not that battle abbey. Right, okay. Here's the witnesses again. I'm going to put Peter's codes up. I didn't use them there. But for physical dowsing, I don't know how he does it. He can bring up a number sequence, we can bring up a colour sequence, that's blood. We use, that's a piece of metal there on a card, that's a piece of human blood, and they all seem to work. Peter's codes physically work, and his colour codes actually work. So it's developing into a very powerful analytical tool. So we looked at dowsing for glucose, so just to put that picture in your mind, that's how we analyse it. Carbon-14 could be one of the trace chemicals for reduction. Early signs yet, but we are beginning to sort of have evidence in looking at one or two analyses that this is going to stand up. Carbon-14 is formed up there of cosmic rays, atoms sort of interacting together and turning into other atoms, and all the details, and down it comes onto the Earth, gets assimilated, that's the word I was looking for. So if you're out here, you're going to be full of cosmic rays, and it seems that's physical targets we've just looked at. One demonstration I'm not going to do is that using a laser, we've discovered, Gordon discovered this, when you fire a laser at the body, the laser also produces a magnetic field, which goes straight through the body. When it comes out the other end of the body, it's picked up all the magnetic fields of the material that's in the way. And again, I can do that with the nail and bottle. When you bring this up to an object, that's an implant, all the magnetic fields from that implant will be in the sort of laser. So we're still working on that, but again, it's really encouraging. And again, this is the power of biolocation. We get a new project, and not only do we find out techniques very applicable, but we also discover new techniques, new discoveries about the phenomenon. It's not without its problems, as we mentioned. Right. I want to come quickly on to stains. Just looking at the time here. So this is what Jeff mentioned about the pictures of the P and the M and the S gills. You don't need a whacking great big crystal or 4 grams of glucose to actually respond to things. The sense picks up quite low levels of material, and it may be a couple of hundred atoms. This is why probably we haven't got a ferromagnetic sense, because that's like looking at the car headlights. Too much energy. And sensory systems, the receptor cells, the nerves, the physiology do not work on high levels of energy. They rapidly changes happen inside the cell and stop them working. So, very simple demonstration of some stains. I've got 2 sheets of tissue paper here. I'm going to take one out. They're in a folder. I'm going to rub my hands. Tissue. Apart from dirt, dust from the day's work, human skin is going on there. Keratin, protein, highly magnetic. And as we all know, or you've probably heard this statistic, 90% of house dust is human skin. And Alan, as an engineer, also told me today how much is on the underground, or human skin on the underground, is it, Alan, over dust?
There's a lot of it, it's mostly the...
Yeah, and hang as well. I've contaminated that now with keratin. So I'll put it on our dowsing bench or tripod. I will then get my human skin witness, which is there. And as ever, you put your rods down and cover them. Never do that in the field. Put your rods down, you'll never find them. And again, all I need to do, so I'll come in here, I'll pick up the aura. It's a small one. There's the field there, and I can follow that. A very simple example of staining. Spacemen, taking people, will leave a stain. All these processes stain. We call them stains. They leave residue. That can be by abrasion and a number of sort of ways. I'll show you another simple demonstration of that. Plastic bottle. Stage manager isn't here, is he? Right? If I just do that, enough plastic has come off that now. I'll just get a witness, plastic cap witness, and I come on there. Takes a few minutes. All the atoms that have come off the plastic, the molecules, have all gone into the crevices on the stage, generated this field. The field is laid down, and we can douse it. So that's what we got from the diagram. 10 years ago, I poured a bottle of red wine in the corner of the field, my research field, and I'm still dousing it today as if I poured it, there and then on the spot. Because once it gets into the material, you can't get it. If I scrub that stage, it would still be there. Because the atoms and the molecules get into all these cracks and crevices. So, abduction, we know what clothing they wear, we know how they operate. If there's a physical presence, they will leave a stain. And from what we wear in the space clothing and other processes, we know the trace of chemicals. So we've got to put this in use. What can happen with these stains? You can either have an halo, where just stuff is just, you sit down and eat your biscuit, your cake, your crumbs go everywhere, or they can be laid down very geometrically. So if you had a wall or building on the ground, this is the archaeology we could douse up a stain of a roundhouse, and with the witnessing, everything is in there, from the post holes to where the dog snack, from the dog hair, because it goes down into the ground over time, and it impregnates in the solid atoms. So that's just going to mention this because we did a lot of work with Maiden Castle in our first book, because the dikes, it's not a castle, the Romans attacked it, all the blood is down here, where the Roman army came out and doused the battle in great detail. Because we know what the Roman soldiers ate, it'll be in the blood. It's a temple, the dikes are ceremonial. This isn't a fortification, it may have been used. And I think there's about 1,000, Wikipedia says, or 1,300 hill forts. So guess what? In view of what we're finding out, something strange about hill forts. First of all, some of them said to me, they look like windings on Solomon. And from our work that we've been doing on the hills, Paul particularly has been sort of very active today going out to these sites, and where I live in St Albans, because these dikes are everywhere, they're all over the country. They just happen to be around their hills sometimes. There's the Wands dike just down the way from Bristol, runs from miles across the country. St Albans has got dikes, ditches called Morning. Of course, we went down in there, we found them full of what's called meaty chemicals. And the evidence is building. These Cambridge University studies, they reckon now by new radiocarbon dating techniques, They were built in 75 years. They just can't do that with what was around at the time, from what we understand. I'll give you a flight past one. I used to be a pilot, and when we were doing a lot of work on the druids, I spent a lot of time flying around these earthworks. So we knew quite a lot about them, so this one should. Not great quality. I was trying to fly and give a shot. But this is Beacon Hill, I think, down by Holmes country, isn't it? There's the so-called hill fort on the top. And everyone you fly over, after a while, you start to think hill forts, very often poor defensive, but a lot of time and investment to dig them if they're going to be defensive. There I get a nice shot. Well, they have been used, so I think this was the project, I think Jeff, wasn't it, Cambridge, you put it out when they were built? When were they built, the Cambridge study?
Oh, they reckon 6,700 years ago, something like that.
So we've done a lot of research on stars. We think some of these images you saw from Jeff, they came down. Our gifts came down in the Earth big time. And then for some reason, they all packed up the rest. Jeff will go into that a little bit more. I'm just going to finish on very quick. I'm conscious of time. This is quantum tunnel. I could do a demonstration on this. I've got a quantum tube here. This is the maser engine. The gills can travel faster than the speed of light. We know that. This is the principle of the maser engine. It's got a power supply at the back, battery. There's a magnetic collar. They use iridium in the magnetic collars. I'm using something else. It creates a standing wave system. In here is ammonia. If I charge this up, the ammonia, a beam will go right across there, through the wall, out the building, through the next building, and keep going. Closely followed by ammonia particles. If I point it at anything, it will become stained with ammonia. And ammonia is very volatile. So urine, for example, fresh urine on the ground, the urea in it rapidly turns to ammonia. After 5 or 10 minutes, you can't douse ammonia. If it's tunneled, it's still, the ammonia is still actually there. And they use ammonia as a fuel in their laser engines, as Jeff mentioned. And it's a very simple equation, as I see it, E equals mc squared. Energy is mass times speed of light squared. Those particles could be coming out of there close or fast to the speed of light. So we're trying to work the technology. You need a lot of iridium. They use a lot of iridium in this engine, and a piece of meter wire about 1/4 millimeter thick is 800 pounds. So that's why I said about the iridium as a trace of the chemicals. So it's a doubtable effect, but nevertheless, they are using a natural process. They haven't gone the way of the electric wave. They've gone the way of the magnetic wave. It's got enormous power. It's not physical power. It's a power over molecules to do things. And that is called quantum tunneling. And that is another way we feel we might be able to get a reduction. Because the equipment they wear and how they come down, the place will be quantum tunnel, will be riddled with quantum tunnel material. So the dowsing, I'm not going to do so much more on that, but that's just to give you an insight of how we're doing that. This technology. There we are, so the spaceship lands, then coming out of this engine, Jeff will talk about this on the Rendlesham, there'll be particles coming out on the quantum tube. That's what the maser engine is essentially, and when it hits the ground it'll just keep going through it. And guess what? We come along and we find another object. Because other things will be tangled down. And you get the complete outline of the ship, which Peter's graphite. with quantum tunneling, as well as abrasion. So again, the invitation, come out, we'll show you, we'll do something once you learn the techniques. Very quickly, just to finish, these holograms, they're complex things, magnetic entities. I do a very simple demonstration of what we're working on. So the blue here is my sun. It's full of helium. Put that there. I've got in here magnetic lens Jeff talked about. It's highly classified, I can't show it here. It's incredibly simple. And I'm going to put on the lens. We tumbled to this long before alien stuff about my roof, as Jeff says, because my roof is full of pores and it's so magnetically active, we'll get all sorts of strange effects. And one of the things we discovered was that the roof was actually creating these magnifications. Right, what will form now above that lens is a response area. It's magnified. The balloon is made out of foil, as if I used latex when I bought it yesterday, it wouldn't be hanging there. And then I pick up the foil with a foil witness. If I use helium, and it's three-dimensional, because if I come in here, it stops there. If I come in here, it will stop there. And when we plot that out, I can make it bigger. So I come in with the foil, and this is three-dimensional dowsing. I can't reach the top of that, so what I've got to do, I've got again one of our aerials. I'm using common carbon string. As soon as I put that string into the hologram, the string becomes magnetically reactive with the same field as in the hologram, and you can douse it. I think string, you look at the molecular structure of string, size and the molecules, and the way they are arranged, they're perfect conductors for this energy. So that's how we built up these three-dimensional images on this craft. I've run out of time, I'm conscious of the time. What I was going to do was make a little model. This is my iPad. Sparking plugs, of course, have lots of iridium in it. I was going to make a little model there, put it on there, and I will blow that up. And you'll have a sort of 10-foot by 4-foot model of an iPad, which again is a model of that. So that's how we get the holograms. That was the model there. So just to quickly finish on this, hologram formation, natural process. We started doing this with cars. And you can tell when someone's in the car because you can use a chemical called ATP, which is the chemical that deals with your energy release in your here you go, 1 minute, Jeff. It's also a natural process. Any voltage source active in the car will also produce a hologram. This is what happens when the ships land. That's basically what we're looking at when we douse them. That's a cutaway of an aircraft. We follow lines and we end up with a real detailed picture of the craft. It is absolutely staggering. That's the Rendlesham hologram, which Jeff will talk about in due course. I just want to mention very quickly something called the astroscope. I named it after this situation. Professor William Sugar, which is an astronomical instrument whose surface constellations are delineated and the stars are easily known. So when you get a hologram of our sun down, we get all the other planets. Sorry, we get all the other planets. We get Jupiter, Mars. These are where the planets are today. And you go out to my field, and I put the astroscope up with a lens. The planets are all there, the holograms. You can douse the chemicals on the planets. You can douse the composition, and they are moving, the moon going around the sun. You look at your orreries and your planets, and it follows it. And you'll find them out there as well. They're everywhere. They're around Mars. There's a huge space station on the other side of the sun, orbiting the Earth. It is absolutely staggering what is out there. That's a model of the stars. I've started looking at stars. That's the local star neighbourhood. It's taken a bit of sorting out. I look at the university sites. We're in the middle there. And guess what? We've just rented 5 acres of field, and we have identified our first star neighbours. Tau Ceti, Eridani, Sirius, A and B, Procyon, Alpha Centauri, Barnard Star, and Indy, Eridani and Indy. And they're out there as well, so they're everywhere. The craft, the space stations, they are. Big project, this is going to be a summer's project. You can transmit the information down out of these crystals. I can put an apple on the crystal, and I'll be able to douse apple information all the way along. That's how they communicate. I'm just closing out. We've talked about that. We look at some more as if we get time at the end. We have a problem. Mr. Galileo said that when he invented the telescope, people wouldn't look down it. And we think we've got the same situation here. Come and look at our telescope. We'll teach you this thing. Finally, last summer, if they're up there, if they've been here in the past, if people have been abducted, are they coming down? I was out on this crop mark in my field. Totally, there's no tracks to it. It's not a crop circle. That's a couple of weeks' growth of new vegetation. The grasses will flatten. Guess what? The grass is quantum tunnel with ammonia, beryllium, and there's a great big hologram of a ship there. So they are coming down. Over to you, Jan. Over to you.
Nigel, are you going to show the dowsing of somebody?
I thought we'd do it at the end.
Right, lovely,
Yeah.
thank you.
Give a shout for time for your study.
Right, I've been with you most of the day, and I've never known such a patient audience. So what I'm going to do is very quickly run through the slides that we've got, and the first one should be the actual research program that we have. And this is the actual case study on the research program. The main thing about the research is that we're trying to progress most of the areas that we're doing, and amongst them, of course, is the archaeological work, which we now know the Gills were active over in New Zealand, in Malaysia, in down in Tenerife, as I mentioned earlier on, as well as in Europe, so and also North America. So it appears to have been a global sort of invasion, if you like to call it an invasion, of the Earth. So we're pursuing that as far as we can go. Now, the other thing is that with the investigation of the Rendlesham incident, we now know that we can pick up and do a crash site investigation of recent UFO landings. So we can actually get the shape of the ship, the number of people on board, and the details of it. There's a report on the Rendlesham incident, and we show that the thing landed because it had engine failure. One of its two engines was failing, and we know that it wasn't seen the following day because they put up a cloaking fence around the craft. That was our second investigation, which hasn't been written up yet. So we feel that we're on top of investigating incidents of UFO sightings and so on. We also know that they don't have to land for us to pick up the exhaust from their engines. And so we can easily do that if it comes out sufficiently low for the exhaust from the engine to hit the ground. So it's from that that we think that we should be able to investigate abductions as well. And the same, if you like, the forensic work, the crime scene investigation techniques should be applicable to that, and we should be able to see what is going on. We do try to keep people informed. We keep the American SETI people informed of what we're doing, and we also, now there's a British SETI program, we also try to keep them informed as well. Right, if we could move on to the next one, next slide.
Nature, all the way forward, all the way to the...
Yeah.
Nature?
Next slide. Right. Get that up. Now, this might be probably the thing that may be more interesting to you than other stuff that we've been doing. We identified life in the galaxy clearly right back in November 2010. And we had a technique where we used the occultation of stars by the moon to actually identify. So we know exactly which star, and we can look at their planets individually. Now, our techniques have improved considerably since then, and given enough acreage, we can actually get the star coming towards a magnetic picture of the moon with the planets out on either side of the star, and we can identify which ones have got life on, which ones are oxygen on, and so on. So there's now absolutely no doubt about the existence of intelligent life throughout the galaxy, and we've actually named a number of these planets. Their technology and culture. The technology is that they have tapped, if you like, the energy of the universe. They've got mastery of their fission and atomic reactors, and they've got mastery of cold fusion and hot fusion. And they know how to collect the debris of space, if you like, as they actually travel through it. They have also managed to work out how to take the M out of E equals mc squared. And as soon as you remove mass from that equation, you're no longer tied to the speed of light. So they have no difficulty now in moving at speeds considerably greater than the speed of light. And using that sort of technique, they would be able to abduct people and move them over by considerable distances in very short periods of time. It's probably that bit of information, when we got hold of it, that made us start taking abduction seriously. We now know that how they might in fact